This is Caroline from Caroline's Adventure. We all face challenges in our lives. How do some people take those challenges and turn them into powerful results? Join me as we dig into a story on resilience, hope, and joy, and uncover lessons we can each use in our own lives. But before we start, please take a moment to show that 5-star rating button some love, and follow while you're there to be updated every time I release a new episode. Now, before we begin, a word of caution. On this podcast, we regularly discuss topics like sexual assault, suicide, and addiction, which may be disturbing to some. Please take care as you listen. And if you need support in the United States, reach out to the crisis text line at 741-741. Hey y'all, here we are at the end of season 2 of the podcast, and it's been an amazing experience. Last 2 seasons, I have learned so much. I have grown so much because it's been a lot harder than I expected, but it's also been a lot more fun than I expected. I'll be honest, when you guys first convinced me to do a podcast, I thought that finding the guests and taping the episodes would be the tough part. And turns out that's not it at all. I've been so lucky to have some amazing guests come on and just be honest and genuine with their stories. The discussions flow so easily that it's amazing how easily the whole piece just clicks into place. The technical piece has been the piece that's been the hardest. The figuring out podcast editing and soundboard and how to use a microphone, because it's a whole art form. You have to get close enough that it picks up, but not so close that you have all kinds of extra noise. And it's been a huge growing opportunity, but it's also been a lot of fun. I know at the end of last season, I did a recap of all the episodes, and this season I want to do something a little bit different. There's a topic that I've been meaning to talk about with you all for a while now, and honestly, I kept waiting to see how it was going to play out. And what I'm talking about is the Blake Lively situation with the movie It Ends With Us. And if you're not familiar, It Ends With Us is based on a true story of a girl who grew up in an abusive home. And she wrote a novel about it. And Justin Baldoni read the novel and was blown away. He wanted to learn more about what domestic abuse is about and what that entire subject is about, because he wanted to be able to handle it with sensitivity and kindness and in a very real way, because he wanted it to be more than just dramatized situation. He wanted to be able to see if he could really address the issue in a real way and make some difference. The issue has become that Blake Lively, in a series of press junkets for her role in this, has been very dismissive and very flip with how she's addressed questions and really been hurtful in how she's handled some of the topic. And so what I thought I would do is I would share with you all my experience with domestic violence, and then kind of give you some insight on why it is so problematic that she's chosen to be as dismissive as she has. One of the things that I've been pretty open with in the past is that I grew up in a house of abuse. That means a lot of different things for a lot of different people. In my case, my father was physically, verbally, and emotionally abusive. I was on truancy warning for my first and second grade years because I missed so much school. And part of it was that my parents weren't great about making me go to school, but a lot of it was that when you've got such bad bruises, you can't be sent to school. One instance that has always been really raw with me, we didn't have any clean laundry, and we hadn't had clean laundry for a while. It's a pretty recurring theme of my childhood, but I didn't have any clean clothes. And the only piece of clothing that I had that was clean was a pair of red overalls that no longer fit me. They were too small. And so when I would put them on, even when I would put the shoulder straps at the furthest reach, they rode up in the crotch and it hurt. And just putting them on hurt. And my mother wanted me to wear those to school. And I kept saying, but I don't want to wear them. They're not comfortable. And I know that I probably wasn't as clear in that as I needed to be. I was a first grader, you know. I was probably 6, and I was trying to explain to her why I didn't want to wear those. And so we were having a fight, and my father, I believe, had been outside. He came in, and we were fighting about this, and he came in and blew up. And that was a pretty typical experience with my father. It took me years to understand why I received so much of the brunt of his abuse. He blew up, and he grabbed me by the front of my overalls. And I remember him holding, like, grab me, pulled me up, and shaking me. And he would say, "I'm going to shake you so hard that your teeth are going to rattle." And that was something he would do, is he would shake as hard as he could. So he was shaking me, and I was terrified. And he threw me down and stomped out of the room. And I remember I began to hyperventilate because I was terrified at this point. And my mother was there, and she was like, "You gotta just breathe, you gotta just breathe." And I'm hyperventilating. And he comes back with a knife that he had made years before. And he picked me up by the suspenders of my pants and took the knife and cut him off of me. And then he beat the ever loving crap out of me. And when I talk about fear in life, I don't know that you can understand what fear like that is like until you've an experience like that. Because seeing the humanity leave someone's eyes is terrifying. Having someone that much bigger than you come after you is terrifying. Feeling them beat you and realizing that they no longer have the restraint to hold themselves back is terrifying. But having that knife come at me was fear on a whole different level. And he beat me so badly that I missed school for a week. They couldn't send me to school because I had bruises that were so bad. And that's just one story. And that was my childhood, though. I missed large chunks of school. I remember at the end of first grade, one of the teachers pulled me aside and asked me about the bruises. And I don't know what ever happened with that. I don't know if anything ever happened with it, but she had seen the bruises multiple times. And I knew well enough at that point in time to lie, because as my parents said over and over again, if you tell anybody, they will take you away and they will give you to someone worse than we are. I mean, I was told repeatedly that my father hit me because I was a bad kid. And I believed it as a child. When the adults that are in your life tell you that something is your fault, you believe them that it's your fault. Over the years, memories have come to the surface over and over again. And each time it's being victimized by the experience all over again, because you think that you know all the pain, and then suddenly out of nowhere something triggers it, and you have this whole new memory that you didn't realize you had. And so you experience the fear again, you experience the uncertainty again, experience the shame. I had a lot of shame with this over the years. It wasn't until I was well into my adulthood that I realized that none of this was ever my fault. For a while, as an adult, my mother denied that it had ever happened. I questioned it for a little while. I thought, am I crazy? Did I make this all up? Like, I have these memories that are so vivid and so real. But maybe she's right. Maybe I did make it up. And then I realized that's not how memory works. I read enough about it to realize that it's not uncommon for abusers to either diminish or completely hide the truth of what happened, especially if it's inconvenient to them and it paints them in a bad light. It's very common. And then my father spoke with my aunt about the overall incident, and he gave just enough details behind it for her to realize that the story I told her all those years ago was real. And so it was amazingly reassuring to realize that, yeah, no, it did really happen. And even though my mom chooses to pretend it didn't, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. That these experiences that I remember so vividly and that hurt all these years later and that are still so raw and so painful did happen. And so that's why someone with the visibility of Blake Lively, who acts flippant or frivolous, is so hurtful and so damaging. Because people that have been abused, we've been victimized before. We've seen abuse from our parents often, or if we are the person who's experienced it first from the standpoint of a partner that's abusive. But the other thing that I have realized is that lots of times your peers can sense when you've got a weakness. And so not only did I get abused by my parents, but my peers took advantage of that. They saw that I was weak and that I was hurting. And so they made fun of the fact that I wore dirty clothes all the time and that, I didn't always have food and that my hair was unbrushed and that I was not well cared for, that I was dirty. And they made fun of that and they ridiculed me for the fact that I was starving at lunchtime because some days that was the best meal that I had access to. And they made fun of the fact that my clothes and my body were dirty. And the thing with abuse is that usually you're not getting it from only one source. People pick up on it. Predators pick up on it. And then you're experiencing it in every facet of your life. And so when you see someone who represents your experience in a movie, it's amazingly validating because part of the abuse cycle is making you believe that you are completely alone. And the reason that you're in this situation is because you're deserving of it, that whatever's being done to you is what you deserve. And so when you see that represented somewhere else, you realize you're not alone and that it's not a situation where you're abused because you deserve to be abused. It's that they're not a good person and they're abusing you because of their own issues. Incredible to be seen like that and to see your experience represented somewhere else is so validating and so powerful. But it's also why people would want to talk with a star that represents that, because whether it's her lived experience or not, she's realistically conveying it on the screen. And it's going to make them feel seen in a way that they may never have been seen before. And so for her to make jokes about, when asked how people would reach out to her if they want to contact her, rather than saying, I'm not an expert in this, but if I were to give any tips, I would just suggest contacting a domestic abuse hotline. She made jokes about how, like, gee, do they want me to turn my location on my phone, or what is it they're looking for? And that's so dismissive and it's so hurtful because these people have already been told that they're nothing. That's why their abusers say that they abuse them, is because they deserve it. And people that have been abused are hungry for connection. Abusers work by separating you from everyone else around you, by making you feel alone and making you feel like their love and acceptance, even though it comes with this abuse, is necessary for your existence and for your happiness in life. Because the thing with abuses is that they do a cycle. It's not that they're constantly abusive. It's that lots of them, this isn't all of them, but lots of them, when things are good, they are amazing. When my father was good, he was the best father in the world. He was so much fun. He was wonderful. But when the abuse would start, the bottom of the world would drop out. And you find yourself doing everything in your power to bring more of the good because you've experienced it. It's like a drug. The more you experience the good, the more hungry you get for it, the more hungry you get for the acceptance and the love and the good times because you've experienced them and they are so wonderful. So to have someone represent a situation that you experience, you feel that connection, whether you realize you're looking for it or not. You're hungry for that connection. You're hungry to be seen. You're hungry to see someone else who represents your lived experience because it shows you're not alone. And then to have that person make jokes about it and to handle it flippantly and to handle it in a way that just isn't kind. Invalidates the lived experience of people who are living or have lived in abuse all over again. And I kept waiting for Blake to come out and make some kind of public statement. And I was curious to see what it would be, at a bare minimum, an apology, a genuine, wow, I took this job and I clearly didn't realize the depth that came with it. And I'm so sorry. Something like that would have been amazing. Or if she'd come out and said, you know what, I've experienced abuse in some way, shape, or form. And what I didn't realize was that it made me very uncomfortable. And so I handled that by making flippant jokes that were really tasteless, but I'm very apologetic and I'll do better. Or something. I think that either one of those would have been fine. I don't know if she's been in abuse or not, but at least, help us have some understanding of why you took the role in the first place if you're not going to treat it with kindness and reverence, but also why you would be so flip in the interviews and talk about absurd things like wearing your florals with your girlfriends to go see the movie. Like, that's not what this movie is. That's just not it. So that's why I had held off on talking on this, is that I wanted to see where the story would go. And I've held off for a couple of weeks and I kept waiting and I kept hoping that something would happen. And it hasn't gone anywhere. And at this point in time, I feel like she's done more damage than good with her silence. So I want you to know, if you've experienced abuse, you're not alone. You didn't deserve it. And it's their shame, not yours. You don't deserve to carry that. I know the pain is there. It never fully goes away. Eventually, you learn that you did deserve better, and you do deserve better. And if you're still in that situation, you deserve better in this moment right now. Help is out there, but it's not easy. You have to be prepared to step away from that addictive cycle. And trust me, I know how addictive it is. I've broken it several times. And it's never easy. It eats you alive every single time. But you can do this. And you do have support. There are so many services out there. You are never in a situation where you don't have support. If you're religious, churches are amazing support networks. And if not, they'll still help you. If your local church isn't your thing, there's the domestic violence hotline. There are halfway houses that can help. There are resources. And a quick Google search will give you any kind of support you need. And if you're watching this and you're like, Caroline, I need help, reach out to me on social media. A quick post on one of my messages usually is the best way to see it. I'm not great with DMs, but if you're in a situation, reach out, because no one deserves to go through abuse alone. And you're not alone. And you are loved. I love you. And I'm sending you so much love and so much support in this, because it's hard. but you're the only one that can change the path of your life. And it isn't forever. The little girl inside of me still really struggles some days with the messages I was told by my father. I ended up having to go no contact with my mother. I saw her conditioning my children to lie and to keep truths from me. And I realized that I'm not sure what she was grooming them for, but that was the same type of behavior that I was groomed for my entire childhood. I was always told, you can't tell your grandmother, you can't tell the people at school, you can't tell anyone else. Several times there were adults in my life that I made the mistake of telling, and I don't know what happened, but I know that they dramatically dropped out of my life completely after that. And for a long time, I thought that it was my fault for being open with them. And that's what happened, was that they rejected me because I was stupid enough to be honest with them. And what I realize now is that I'm guessing they went to one or both of my parents, and it didn't go well. And it makes me sad. It makes me sad for the little girl that deserved to have someone support and believe her. It makes me sad for those relationships, because throughout my childhood, I had some amazing adults that brought their love and their support into my life and then disappeared suddenly. And it makes me sad because I know I'm not alone in this, and that there's a lot of us out there that carry this burden. But it also makes me really grateful, because I came through that, and I now have a life that is mine. I live on my terms. I choose to only let people in my life that are kind and loving and supportive. I don't raise my children in that kind of environment. And that was a very conscious decision. And anytime I see anything that even remotely resembles that, for instance, with my mother, I remove it from their path, because no one should have to go through that. It ends with me. I refuse to let that dysfunction and that pain continue forth if I can do anything about it. And you can make that same decision. It doesn't have to just be abuse. It can be addiction. It can be self-harm. Anything that you have in your life that you don't want, you can choose today to make a step forward and move past it. And it's not going to be easy. I don't pretend that it's easy. There are plenty of days where my heart breaks for the little girl that experienced so much pain in her day-to-day life, but it's worth it. My life now is so beautiful and so full of love and support and kindness, and we all deserve that. And so if you're experiencing anything other than that, know that you deserve better. Reach out for help, because we're all in this together. None of us are alone. I don't care how alone you feel, you're not alone. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for supporting my podcast. It's a chance to use some of the experiences that I've been through to help others grow and learn and live their best lives as well. So thank you for a second season. It's been amazing. I already have a bunch of episodes taped for season 3. I'm excited to share those with you, because there's some amazing stories as well. And I'm sending you so much love. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Caroline's Adventure podcast. While you're here, subscribe to the show so you're the first to catch new episodes when they're released. And if you enjoyed hanging out with me today, please leave a 5-star rating. For links to social media and more content, visit the description for this episode or go to carolinesadventure.com. That's Caroline with 2 A's, adventure.com.